Hello everybody and welcome to my next Get a Life Moment episode with myself, Lisa Davies. I'm joined today by Rick Paul and we were trying to decide how to describe what he does best. Some people might say a spiritual counsellor, some people might say an earthbound guide. I think he's got a toolkit, I think would be the easiest way of describing it, a toolkit to help people and guide them on their journey through life. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Yeah, good. It's great to have you on Get a Life Moment. So for those people who haven't met you before, who is Rick Paul?
Well, Rick Paul is just an ordinary working bloke by day, but it just seems to be that over the last few years I've added that extra skill to my toolbox where I can read people's energies, work with spirit. We can work on the psychic vibration, we can work with mediumship, and I honestly consider myself the sort of person that if I feel like I lack a skill with anything, then I go out and get that tool. I'm all about working for people's highest and greatest good. So it's like you were struggling there a little bit to describe what I do, and that's my thing as well. I struggle a little bit to decipher what I do, but when I sit with a person, somehow I just know, and that's the best way I can put it. Somehow I just know.
Yeah. So you connect with people at that deeper level and help them to work out their pathway forward. Is that fair to say?
I would agree with that, Lisa. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. But you weren't always doing that, because you said that's the last few years. What was the journey that brought you to working in a more spiritual way then? What were you doing before? How did you get to this?
Well, for 12 and a half years of my working career, I was a prison officer, which was walking the landings and dealing with the lesser lights of this world. We'll keep it nice and friendly, Lisa, on there. But let's just say the more difficult people. And for me, it was a fairly traumatic time, working with damaged people all the time, and trying to instill a sense of discipline and trying to help people back towards the community and leading a more productive life. But there was always something about me that realized that wasn't my role to take. It wasn't my pathway. It wasn't my divine pathway. And then one day, towards the end of my service, I realized that I couldn't do it anymore. I hadn't got any answers. It was one of those sort of where you've got to step off the diving board almost and trust that something will catch you. And to cut a very long story short, I ended up working as a labourer while I decided what I was going to do with the rest of my working life. And I looked up one day in this garage where I was clearing out all of the rubbish and all of the stuff ready for the next delivery, and stood in the corner was my granddad in full spirit form. And being a black and white kind of guy, which I'll explain that for anybody who's looking in at me, I see things black or white. There is no grey area. There is no fuzzy ground or anything like that. It either is or it isn't. And I'm telling you now, when I looked in that corner and saw my granddad there, I've never experienced a feeling like that, because I ain't got the tools to cope with it. So that's what started my journey.
And was that the first time you'd ever had an experience like that?
If you'd asked me then at that point, I would have said yes. But once the journey's gone on, I've now looked back at other things which I think, well, I can't put logic to anymore. So that was maybe spirit. So from a very young age, I feel that I'd seen what I consider spirit energies, but I just had no training and no idea, and not come from a background that in that sense, not had anybody in the family that we could say, oh, they've got that gift. So not a lot of, I don't mean this in a negative way, but not a lot of support, because I just didn't know who to go to ask the questions. So it's been from there, Lisa. It's just, for me, it's been like the salesman that's knocking on the doors. You just knock on the door and hopefully that somebody will come out and make sense of things for you. So yeah, not an easy journey, but thoroughly worthwhile. And I've loved every moment of it.
So interestingly, going back to your career in the prison service, when you said that, you know, it was quite traumatic for you and you didn't feel it was your role to get those people back to, you know, if they were damaged, it wasn't necessarily your role to get them back into the community. You didn't feel at ease with that. What was going on there energetically? obviously this was before you had this experience with your granddad. Was there something there that was going on energetically with those souls, for want of a better word, that made you feel such discomfort in that role?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those times that I don't sort of look back on it with particularly fond memories. But what I realise now is it's been a dramatic sort of turnaround from the thought process of the disciplinarian who tells people what they're going to do and they structure their day, to then coming full circle and going from the black and white to the sort of colour side of it, where you sit with that person and then you find out what they need structure and help with. So I think what was going on energetically is I've always put that energy out that I want to help people, but in the sense of I want to do it in a way that I want to do it. And that's alongside with people. I never want to be come across as telling people that they must do, and I find it quite difficult with because things could change in an instant. You know, tempers flared and things could be, and you had to be prepared to deal with that. Whereas when you're working with a person's energy that wants to come and work with you and wants to discuss things with you and wants to look at a different option, it brings out a lot different side to you. It brings out that empathic side, it brings out that caring side. And I'll be honest, one of my main reasons for actually leaving the job was because I thought I'd lost that, and that actually raised fear in me, because I've always been sort of a genuine kind of guy. What you see is what you get, but I've always been sort of protective of my own energy. So if you're in me in a circle, if you're with me, that's fine. And if you're not, that's also fine. I dealt with either side. But then as you work with spiritually, you've got to, it's like the bird going on the branch, Lisa, that it trusts that when it steps onto that branch, that it'll hold its weight. And I found that really difficult, because that's putting your soul, that's putting your energy, that's putting what you are out to be other people, and you've got to trust that they're going to respond in the right way. So my first few months out of leaving the job and discovering the pathway that I'm now on, I was reluctant. I'll be honest, I can't really think of any other words. You know, you sit and you're connecting with people's energy, so I knew what I was getting around people. But I think my biggest problem was actually admitting that to myself. Because if you've had 30-something years, let's say, and I'm a bit older than that, I'll be honest, but 30-something years of thinking in a certain way, and then something happens that gives you a totally different opinion, a totally different objective, it's like being overdosed on too much freedom, and it was scary. So now, 7 years after leaving that job, I can now say, well, I'm open to anything spiritually. I'll work with anything as long as it's positive, it's uplifting, and it gives a little bit of clarity and guidance to people that choose to sit with me.
So as you describe yourself, you're very black and white, or as, you know, people might say straight John Bull, you know, in the past. And then you go, okay, you're doing a job and you see your spiritual form of your granddad in the corner, and you're like, what on earth is going on? And you say, you know, you said it was hard to find anybody who kind of understood that. It wasn't something in your family or in your background. So how did you then go on to develop that, you know, as a chap who'd been very black and white, it is or it isn't, and now you've got your own personal proof? What did you do with that? How did you then go on to develop those skills?
Well, I'm a big believer now that when spirit knock on your door, or whatever you choose to call it, your God energy, your own personal energy, your own personal development, that you've got a choice whether you answer that door or not. And I was definitely getting signs now, as I look back, a long time before that sort of turning point. So it's an easy thing if you've got a problem with your car that you take it to a mechanic. But who do you go to when you've seen your granddad, who at that point had been past 10 years? Who do you go to and say that, yeah, that's what you've seen? Because a doctor had probably prescribed medication. A psychiatrist would probably pick you up with a tracksuit. So I kind of let it be. I ended up one night going down to the local spiritualist church, and it wasn't a church as such, but it was a room in the back of the community centre near us. I walked through the door, and I'd gone there because the circumstances around me leaving the job was quite an emotional drain. I'd witnessed somebody dying in front of me as well, so there was all of that sort of pent-up energy, and there was something missing. And I walked through that door, and a lady came towards me, and this, I always laugh even thinking about it now, because she come and gave me a big hug. Well, if you can imagine somebody getting in that close to your space in my previous job, that would have presented a threat. And she came up and she gave me a big hug, and it was like the air just left me, stress, tension, and all of that lot. And I just went, and I just let it all go. Anyway, we just got talking as you do, and she looked at me and she went, "You've got a future at this." And I went, "At what?" She said, "Mark my words, within 18 months you'll be on platform." And I went, "Yeah, really?" And yeah, well, the rest, as they say, is history. But so I went in there, and I'm not a particularly religious person. I'm a big believer in people each to their own. I sat in there and watched mediums come in there, psychics, tea leaf readers, flower readers, you name it. I sat there and experienced the whole gambit of them. And the one thing that grabbed me, I considered whether they were any good or not during the evening that I spent with them, was that they'd all got that lovely intent, that their audience was their priority. None of it was about their ego and how good they were. They were presenting messages, they were giving love, they were giving healing, and they were just lifting people. And I thought, that's what I want to do. That is what I want to be. I've had 12 years of not wanting to give anything of myself. It was a means to an end. And now I've come full circle, and I want to give everything that I can. And I'm talking now, even now, for the rest of my life, that when people sit there in front of me in distress, no part of me is ever going to sit in front of anybody, Lisa, and say, I've got all the answers. No. But I'm a good one. One of the skills that I realized that I've got is that even when I didn't want to deal with, I'm trying to think of the right word. So sort of aggravation, aggression, and things like that. I don't like confrontation.
Yeah.
What I always did was, if there was one of my colleagues was dealing with a confrontational situation, I always went and stood shoulder to shoulder with them. So if there was going to be any trouble, well, I don't know what use would have been, but we were going through it together. And that's how I see clients as well. So sometimes when they sit down with no idea what confrontation they're facing, what difficulty they're facing, but when you sit with me, it's more than just a reading with me. I want you to leave my area, my reading space, or anything, whatever you want to describe it as, feeling a little bit more uplifted than when you sat down. Yeah. And there's no cupboard, and there's nothing that we won't trample on to try and get to the bottom of what's going on. And I market myself as your bald-headed Jiminy Cricket, because I'm your voice of conscience. But when you go through whatever you need to go through, I stand there with you, and we'll walk through it, and we'll find out what the pitfalls are. And this is where the black and white approach comes in and works really well, because you're honest. If I ain't got the answer, Lisa, I'm not going to try and fabricate it to make somebody feel better. I work with the energy that presents in front of me. And the church, thankfully, brought all of that out of me, sitting in circle, going through their development courses, even going out on the platform at churches, which was another story. When you stood up in front of an audience, and then all of a sudden you're looking, and there's 20, 30 pairs of eyes on you, and they're looking at you, and they're going, he's got the answers. And I'm going, he really hasn't.
That's the thing, in going back to, we're still wired with that caveman day sort of mentality, aren't we? And so back in the day when dinosaurs were roaming the earth, if there were several eyes looking at you, you were lunch. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's not surprising that that's a little bit of like, ooh. So, and you've also become quite famous for your beautiful waistcoats, I believe, as well. So how did that all start?
I'm a bit of a Well, I must have been a comedian or an entertainer in a previous life, because I like making people laugh. I like sort of jollying them along, and I also like pranking people. And I'll do anything to get a rise, for want of a better word. I'm trying to think of a nice way of putting it, but yeah, to get a rise out of people. And I thought about it. Right, I'm not the best marketeer. So everything that I do when I'm working is baby steps. It's learning things. And I looked around, and I've been in some magnificent company in the shows up and down the country. And I'm thinking, I want to be like them, but I don't want to be them.
Yeah.
So when you look at these people that have got big reputations, they've spent money on marketing themselves and branding themselves, I'm thinking, how can I do something slightly different? So where this originated from was one of my guides and inspirers on earth. I was sat at a demonstration watching her, and she looked at me and she said, look me up and down, as she came to me in the audience and went, well, I hope you're going to dress a little bit smarter than what you are tonight. And I got like 2 or 3 days,
how it is.
2 or 3 days growth, and sat there in my tracky bottoms and my scruffs. And I thought, So when I went on the first demonstration with her, I was nervous enough as it was. So I thought, I don't want to draw her attention to anything. So I put a waistcoat on.
Right.
So put this first waistcoat on, which was a nice tidy suit. I'd got the shirt and the tie. And she looked me up and down and she went, yes, that'll do. But then when you get your own freedom and you get your own power, grey, black and white is not me.
Yeah.
Right. I am a gob on a stick. I like to be noticed when I went in the room. So I'm going through one of these websites, and this waistcoat just popped up at me, and it was my lightning one, and it's got lightning stripes running all the way through it. So it then became a running joke, the more shows that I did, that I would then wear a shirt and a tie that was totally mismatched.
Yeah.
And then I'd put a waistcoat on it. And the test for it, whether it was going to work or not, when I went to a show, was I'd look at my wife and my daughter, and they'd go, no, do not wear that together. So that just set me on the way. My stubbornness kicked in, and I would wear that. So I became known for that. And the thought process behind it was that it was like a marketing tool, because they might not remember the person behind the waistcoat, but if you're walking along and you're looking for something to attract your eye or attract your attention, oh, I saw him last time, and he was that one that was wearing the waistcoat.
That didn't match anything.
That didn't match anything. But it sticks in your mind, doesn't it? It's one of those. Now, why would I remember that? So that's where the waistcoat came from. And then I just thought, well, it's a brand. So the gaudier they are, the louder they are, the more chance it is that it's going to attract me, because I'm absolutely convinced that I've got some jackdaw in me, because I look at shiny things and it's like, oh, got to have them. Got to have that.
This is it. You never know who might be watching. There might be a waistcoat manufacturer who wants to sponsor you with gaudy and bright waistcoats. You never know.
Come on, we can put details on there if that's the case. If you're looking, yeah, I'll model anything. Me, I'm not proud.
Yeah. So what's been the response then? Obviously, a few years down the line, what's been the response from friends and family? You've gone from kind of being a prison officer in a very dull, very structured environment, very authoritarian, into this, eclectic Jiminy Cricket talking to dead people some of the time. What's been the response from friends and family?
Well, it's even got me a little bit emotional. Incredible, because I thought, and this is what your thoughts can sometimes do to you, I thought that I'd be ridiculed. I really did. I know people will support you, but I expected a lot of mickey taking, and I couldn't be further from the truth. You get the odd one or two that'll drift off, but they're not meant to be in your circle at the end of the day if they can't support you through all your roles. But then, to be fair to you, Lisa, I've always been that eclectic sort. I mean, when I was in the prison service, I was known as the mad bloke, because I didn't do anything that I was supposed to in that sense. I'd always go round and about the houses rather than straight through. I'm not a great lover of authority, to be honest. I don't like being told what to do. I like to explore all avenues. So for me, looking at it now, it's not been that difficult to transition, really. And when I look at the friends that I've still got from the prison service, because I have this thing where I think, if you knew me 15, 20 years ago, all I've done really is evolved. So if you come to me, oh, I remember when you did so and so, yeah, I did it. And I think we all make mistakes during our life, and we all have things that maybe we're not proud of, but I own everything. I own all the good stuff. I own all the lesser stuff, shall we say, because even negativity gives you a learning point. It gives you something that when you go forward that you won't repeat. Not you don't want to, you won't repeat. So the response, when you get an email from a person, and I've still got this email because I'll cherish it till the day that I passed away, that says, you've literally saved my life. What higher compliment can you get than that, Lisa? I mean, to be fair, I don't think I did anything. I just sat there and did what I do, which is sit and listen. And sometimes that's all people need. They just need to know that they can get through that day. And then if you can start laying a structure for them of just going, right, that's step one. So step two is getting through tomorrow. And as long as we wake up every single morning, we can take that next step. So I have got a strong core, strong backbone of people that just share things that I do, support me, come for the readings. And there's no bigger thrill for me than when you stand up in front of an audience and you look round and you've got your ex-colleagues in there looking at you. And you know that they know what you're like in truth. And then I put on this show for them, because it is a show as well, because I do like showing off, I'll be perfectly honest. But they know where it's all come from. So I never make anything up. I never make anything fit. It's fly by your seat of your pants a lot of the time. But I say the support that I get from people, including yourself, I'll give you credit, because we've not met one another for a long time. So, and it is just incredible. And then that's we spoke about earlier about sort of extending the energies, and I think that's what it is. You open yourself up there, put yourself out that I want to do something different. I want to be something different to what I am, and you attract what you're looking for. So that's.
Have you had any really strange, funny messages? Ones that obviously wouldn't divulge your confidence, but ones that have really made you laugh. What you're thinking, I cannot pass that on. Anything that springs to mind that really tickled you?
Yeah, there's been a couple of occasions, because I am quite blunt and I am quite straight to the point. I don't hide behind anything. It is what it is, and I was working with one particular lady, and it's nothing rude or anything like that, so it can be divulged. And I said to her, it's really strange, but I keep getting this message about chicken soup. And she looked at me and she went, can't make anything of it. So what I always say is, well, whatever it is, I don't take it back, because it's meant to be brought forward for you. It's a memory link of some way or something or other, and it'll maybe take 2 or 3 weeks to become obvious. And she went, well, I can't think of anything else, so we'll just take it with you and we'll see. So about 2 or 3 months later, she comes up, you, I said, and your bloody chicken soup. I says, why, what's up? She said, you said to me that I'd find out what this chicken soup is and it'd make me laugh and you'd think of me as soon as it came about. And she said, I was cleaning my car out. She said, get all the stuff out, when you have a spring clean every now and again. She says, and I reached up to the back of my seat, right underneath my seat. She says, and I pulled this can out. She says, cleared all the rubbish and the bits of things that you've got in your car, and I pulled this can out, and it was a tin of chicken soup. And she said, how the hell did you know? I said, I really didn't. I said, I just heard a word, and I just got sensed this thing coming through, and I had to tell you chicken soup. But the funny thing is, my limited experience, what I found now is I read for a lady just recently, only in the last week or so, and I've got running through my head, cheese grater. Tell her about the cheese grater. Well, if you're an analytical person, how do you make a descriptive out of that? How do you pass that off as spiritual? And it's on repeat in my head: cheese grater, cheese grater, cheese grater. And I'm thinking, if I give this, and she's going to think that I'm not quite wide up straight up here. But I thought, Well, I always say I give what I get. I work on the principle of catchphrase that you say what you see. So I give her this cheese grater, and she just cracked up laughing. So it always goes to show that a medium, quite simply, is that channel, that link from spirit towards your client. And I gave her that, and it meant nothing to me. And this is what I've learned over the time that I've been doing it. It doesn't need to mean anything to me. All I am is the gobby person in the waistcoat that passes that piece of information on. I am not the important part of that reading or that message. But it's when you look at people's face, then when they start to crack a smile, you know you're onto something. Then when you think, right, that's bringing in upliftment, that's raising their vibration. And essentially that's what I look at doing all the time. Everybody that I meet, we all know that there's doom and gloom and darkness out there. I just have no want to add to it. I want to take the mickey. I want to get people out there laughing and a bit of smiling and a bit of upliftment. And that is really what I see myself as. I can be seen as a clown. I ain't got a problem with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. As long as it brings a little bit of light and a little bit of entertainment to people, I'm quite happy.
And you see, you did that for me as well. You did that for me it was a few months ago now. And you didn't, I think I did send you a message, but you didn't know at the time. I just happened upon you doing a live on Facebook. And it's a bit like taking coals to Newcastle. I don't tend to ask for a card or anything from anybody else. But you said, oh, do you want a card? I went, oh, go on then. And then you read this card for me. But the thing that stuck in my mind is you said, oh, so I'm just being told rice pudding, and do you want the curtain? I'm just being told rice pudding. Do you want the skin? Do you want the curtain? And of course, at the time, my dad was just coming to the end of his earthly journey. And it was my great aunt, my great grandmother, and my grandmother all together, because they used to cook in the kitchen together, and they used to make rice pudding from scratch. And they always used to say, do you want the curtain, which is the skin on top? And so, of course, it made perfect sense to me. And it was just beautiful reassurance at a time when, my dad was coming to take his final sleep and his transition. So it was absolutely perfectly timed and absolutely beautiful. But, I could imagine to you thinking, what the heck? Rice pudding and curtain, what's that all about? But to the receiver, it's got absolute meaning. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
It is. I mean, now I look back on things that some of the more negative experiences now you can actually use for fuel for people. So when people come to me and go, oh, you wouldn't understand, really, I'm not just saying this just to boost me up or anything like that. There's not a lot I haven't seen of human behavior, some of the experiences that I've been involved in. And then when you look at the ripple effect, if you like, where it's happened to one person, but we don't always consider that when we're going through the darker times, the effect that we might be having on other people. Mm-hmm. So it can be just a simple word. It can be just, right, we'll just put one foot in front of the other until things start to make sense. But, you have to consider that everybody that we meet, if we're in that close proximity, we're in that, or within their aura, we're within their energy. So we are going to pick up things that are around them. And for me, I've got my dad, my granddad were in the military. So there was always a saying with the military thing there of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Mm. So that's the way that I work. I don't over elaborate it, because that's when your analytical mind can start to creep into your messages. And I think, well, it's not for me to take it to pieces. Mm. So I just literally stick with catchphrase, think of, say what you see. And if it rolls down the tube, as I describe it, it rolls down the tube and straight out of my mouth with no filter whatsoever. So sometimes I do have to back myself up a little bit, because you have to know your audience and have a look around and see if the kiddies are watching, because I just embody whatever they give me. If they give me a swear word, but obviously some places like churches, for instance, and if you've got an audience of children, you can't be that literal. So sometimes it's a little bit, I have to be a little bit where put the brakes on. But essentially, if you're working with people's energies and you give it as fluff, and you know that this person is an earthly person that would have just said it like that, I feel sort of duty bound to give it exactly as it is. Or I will say to somebody, right, come and see me afterwards, because I'm only giving you a slight reflection of what's going on there, but this is what I've been told. And the thing is as well, I don't get embarrassed by people going, no, I don't understand. No. And this, my big thing with spirit and working with energy is I trust, and I trust implicitly that if they're bringing it through, somebody's made a journey, somebody's made the effort to come through for that person. And you know, even I've probably done, I don't know how many readings over these last 3 or 4 years I've been doing this. Everyone, whether it's minute 1 or minute 59 of that hour, is just important to me, and so's the feedback.
Yeah. So here's another thing. You were talking about being in the space of somebody's energy. I kind of know the answer to this, but for those people watching, what about doing this at a distance, doing this over Zoom, as we are currently in our global situation? How does, how does that work then? So we're in this energy together here now, but we're not physically in the same space. So some people will say, well, how can you do that? How can you do that? Because you're not in the same room.
Well, again, it's down to trust. It really is. So I have a certain opening up procedure that's personal to me. So I call in my guides and inspirers. I call in the angels, the healing angels. I open up my chakra system individually. I ask for any information that's come through. I ask to be guided, guarded, and protected. I will only work for the highest truth, for upliftment, and for the higher and greater good. And then it's just a case of, right, when that person sits down, it's almost a free-for-all. Sometimes I have to have a pen and a paper. So if you're working on the psychic vibration, the skills that you can be taught, because you can be taught to read cards and work with, I'm teaching you to suck eggs here, you know, but it's for the benefit of people watching. So you can be taught to read cards. Mediumship is slightly different. Yes, there's potentially that you can do it, but I'm like having a two-way conversation. So my analytical mind has to go on a break somewhere, because none of this actually makes sense in reality. I'm just delivering. So I will do the work with the cards that I've got based on the skills that I've learned, but I might sometimes have to break through that conversation and go, why would I need to give you? And it's a constant flowing source. So it's like turning the tap on. Once you give them that permission to come through and bring whatever it is that they're bringing through, they're on it. It's that old film, isn't it? If you book them, they will come. So I often find that if you're not going to make a connection with a client, it's often good to say to them, what are you looking for? Because I found the other night when I was reading for a client that they wanted a certain thing. Now, I don't make guarantees. I will just work with your energy as you present to me. And I will bring through whatever is needed to be brought through. However, and I found this a lot with the feedback, that when you get feedback from people, you go, was that okay for you? Was that all right? And they just sat there absolutely flabbergasted, because the idea that they came with was not what they got. But I'm a big believer that I'm working for spirit. So I pass on what I believe that spirit want the client to know. So I don't get hung up on it. I just sit there, you trust, you open up, and then just go talk. Well, as you've no doubt guessed, I can talk, and I can talk the hind leg off a donkey. So it's brilliant for me. Right, just do what you do. Okay, talk. Right, okay, and then just pass it on. No filter. And then you just say to the client, right, that's your own work now. And it's funny that they'll go off there, and the feedback that I've had for the Facebook Messenger readings and Zoom and things like that is just incredible, because sometimes that momentary gap between the broadcasting gives them that opportunity to just have that pause moment, that think, oh, hang on, where we're going with this. And then that gives them that little bit of energy, that gives them that little bit of upliftment, which gives them fuel. And then when you empower somebody, and I apologize because I'm teaching you to suck eggs. When you empower somebody and give them permission for themselves to live their own life and run with that, it is an incredible feeling. I don't care what anybody says about being ego. When you watch somebody light up, and with the realization of their unique talent, and they can tap within themselves, and this applies to everybody that can get within there and grasp hold of what it is that they're skillful at. you've got so much untapped power. Every single person that watches this, you've got so much untapped power. All you've got to do is believe in yourself, get yourself going forward, and just know that life realistically will throw you the odd curveball or two, but just keep going, because tomorrow's another day. And I just believe in the power of the people. I really do.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So what are you working on at the moment then? What's your aspirations going forward?
Well, I've written a book, which
right.
not a colouring book either, which is yet to be titled, but it's my spiritual journey and my spiritual thoughts, really. What am I working on? Promotion of myself. As you alluded to earlier, we're in a difficult situation where the fairs and events have been quite reduced. So it's bringing the energy really to people when we're doing it on these platforms. And what am I working on? Well, having a business full time, working as spiritual medium, guide, whatever it is that you want to call it. And working with people's energies. I've just recently passed my hypnotherapy diploma, so there's little things on the back burner, but again, I dislike labels, Lisa, so I'm looking at putting things into place so that each client that comes can have something catered towards them. Some might want to go on the spiritual link, somebody might want to go on the therapy link, and I just like to think that I can grab hold of everything. But the waistcoats are here to stay. I did sort of toy with the idea of going down a serious route for one part, and then this for another part, and then I thought, no.
Whether you're doing a clinical therapy approach, whether you're doing out and out spiritual on the platform, the waistcoats were part of it.
That's it, and that's the conclusion I've come to.
Yeah, just show up as you are. You can't be anybody else. They're all taken. No. And on that note, then, as I ask all of my guests, what would be your top tip for life that you can share with the audience?
Right, so as I'm sat in this room with you, I'm sat in front of my show banners, and on my banners, and I can reach, you might not be able to see it very clearly from here, but I am what I am, I do what I do, I am just me. Yeah. So my top tip for people is be yourself. Yeah. Right. Go out there, enjoy your life. Don't let people knock you. Don't let people belittle you. Know your own worth. Know your own value, and know what your energy feels like when certain people come around you. And learn to recognise that some people aren't good for you. We can't go through life agreeing with everybody. No. You put yourself up, and you don't go against the grain. And what I mean by that is, don't change who you are to suit somebody else. Yeah. Be you. And that will attract in whatever it is that you're meant to have. So trust in yourself, trust in life, trust in the process. But yeah, just be you.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure spending time with you and understanding this miraculous journey from being in that very dark suit with a belt and keys right the way through to your very sparkling waistcoats working with spirit. And what a joy to understand that journey. Thanks so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you very much.